storytelling can be connecting people, but can also bring opportunities up through comparison, through imagine if you are going to do that. So practicing storytelling in sales, it led to successful negotiations. Also, to build a good story, you really need to be a very curious person and a good listener, because a story is based on the questions you asked, the curiosities you have, what are you learning, and how you take it into your life.
Welcome back to Mic'd Up. I'm your host, Mike DiCioccio, and today's guest is a true visionary who has transitioned from the corporate world to create a path of self-discovery and creativity. Through poetry, she uncovered a profound way to inspire reflection, spark introspection, and transform lives. And she's doing that. She's an author of this incredible book called Stories with Purpose, which takes readers on a compelling journey into the heart of personal narratives where poetry becomes both a mystical art and a powerful tool for growth. Welcome to the show, Laura Patac.
Mike, thank you so much. What an amazing introduction. And you actually describing the book the way how you did it, I couldn't do it better. So thank you so much for that. And I'm very happy to be here with you and your listeners and your viewers. And I do hope that we are going to bring a bit of curiosity, some introspection based on the discussions which we are going to have, and definitely a lot of value. So thank you for having me here.
Absolutely. Well, I want everyone to know this is the first time I met Laura. We just met a couple minutes ago right before we started recording. So I'm really interested in your story. I love creativity. I love poetry. I'm a musician. I play the drums. And I say play as if it's active term. I wish I was playing more, but I'm a drummer. I'll always be a drummer at heart, even if I'm not in a band. But I grew up really loving music, and I always loved how poetry and music kind of connect, the lyrics of music, and just kind of diving into the personal stories told. And then as I got into branding and marketing and becoming a business owner, storytelling came back. It was something in my past. I was always interested in film and movies and music. And now storytelling is in branding. It's how you feel when you interact with a brand, when you have an exchange with a company, whether it's online or in person. Storytelling, right? So when I saw your book, and I want to admit I didn't get a chance to read the whole thing, but when I'm looking at the notes of your book, I'm like, oh my gosh, she is so perfect for the show. So I want to give a shout out to, I believe, I think it was James Bracken who connected the two of us. So I want to give him credit for the connection.
Yes.
And I want everybody to know, Laura, your website, your book, all your social media, I have it linked in the show notes. Everyone could just go ahead and click on there if they're interested to get more from you. So I know you have your company website there, your social media, you're active on LinkedIn. So anyone tuning in, thank you for being with us here on YouTube, or if you're tuning in on Apple, Spotify. If you love the episode and what you're about to hear from Laura's story, we appreciate you being with us, and obviously do all those crazy things that everyone asks you to do, like the video, comment, subscribe, if you feel called to do that. And so we're going to start, Laura, with your journey. It's pretty interesting because you went from this corporate executive world, right, to a poet. So kind of corporate, you picture buttoned up, you picture, high heels, the whole thing, to a poet, you picture kind of on a small stage in a comedy club where they're doing poetry night. And then to entrepreneur, I think it's this fascinating thing. And by the way, I intentionally made those, drew those images because it doesn't, that's not always true. Just every poet's not in this small time situation. Every corporate leaders not always buttoned up. I'm doing that intentionally because I think it's fascinating that you kind of connect to all of those dots. So what inspired you to take the leap into entrepreneurship?
There is a story behind. And I'm so glad that you mentioned that you've been in drums and music. Mm-hmm. Because while writing Stories with Purpose, I had this epiphany and understanding that any form of art, in fact, it's storytelling. if you are thinking like poetry, music, movies, a painting, there is always behind the outcome which we are hearing or we are seeing, there is a story behind. So the story behind this very interesting choice to move from corporate to become an author, it started, in fact, when I was 16 years old. When I was 16 years old, I was a very introverted child. So one way of expressing how I felt at that time, my emotions, it was through journaling. But still, I was very shy to show my journaling or to disclose it. It was that kind of like keeping my notebook under my pillow for nobody to see what I'm writing.
It was meant for you. It was a good way to get that energy out somewhere.
Exactly.
It needed to exist other than inside your heart and in your mind, but it wasn't really intended for an audience at that point.
At that point. And when you are an introverted child, you realize that you are present but invisible. So therefore, my way of interacting with my friends and even with my parents, with my mom at that time, I encrypted. I did a step more. I took my journal and I encrypted the journal content into metaphor, and I started to write poetry. So the starting point of me as writing poetry was really finding a way to connect with my friends, with my mom, and therefore I started to write. I even published when I was 17. I was still in high school.
That's awesome. And at this time, you were born in Romania? So is this in Romania?
So so I was writing in my mother tongue, in Romanian language. Fast forward.
Mm-hmm.
I did realize that I have this creativity and this kind of gift to translate words on paper in a journal into metaphor. So I realized that I have a creativity, but later on, this creativity become very useful and comes into manifestation in the corporate world. Creativity helped me to, one, inspire teams. I worked and I lived in 7 countries on 5 continents, working in corporation, and I'm so grateful for that journey. And during that journey, I was connecting with people through stories and to really helping in problem solving and bringing my previous experience into play. So there is very...
Now, is that, I have to dive in right there. I don't like to interrupt a good story, but just to put myself in what I call the world of seeing, imagining, okay, we could just drop ourselves back in the time period when Laura's in corporate and you're rolling out these ideas of storytelling, and can you give us an example? And even before you do that, when you were journaling and started to translate your journal entries into poetry to kind of transcribe it, so it had more of that creativity, art behind a message, opposed to saying, I'm having a great day, I'm having a sad day, whatever. I'm just being very general, but then turning that into a creative way to voice those feelings. Where was your mom supportive? You said you kind of presented it to your mom and you started to do it publicly at 17. So was it something that was supported, or did you kind of feel like you had to beat your own drum and take your own path?
My mom was extremely supportive. My mom helped me connect with a critic, someone who was able to guide me and coach me a bit, because my initial writing was very rough, with a lot of emotional expression. So I had a correspondence, like literally mailing exchange with my coach at that time. And what he did, he helped me to first understand much better the way how to express your emotions, but also what you learned about yourself going through those emotions. That was a very important point, which I learned when I was like I was almost like a teenager. Actually, I was a teenager.
Yeah. And talk about, the emotions of any teenager are, it's intense time period of time.
Yes.
There's that transition from childhood to, it's the bridge to adulthood. It's the awkward years. It's the, boyfriend, girlfriend years for the first experience of falling in love. It's, trying to fit in at school and be cool. It's, where am I going to go to college? Then
It's
very
very
quickly,
intense.
it's
Super
what's your
intense.
profession? Yeah. You got to start thinking at 16, 18 years old, where am I going to go to college? What am I doing with my life? It's a big question to ask yourself, and then have the pressure of, you want to make your parents proud. You want to, and it's even way before you think about personal fulfillment, right?
Yes.
I mean, you should be. If I could go back and talk to my 16-year-old self, I'd say, consider doing something you absolutely love, and you can serve the world, because you will get paid through your superpower and your passion. We'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, a lot of emotions as a teenager. So you're putting that all pen to paper, and then you're realizing, and your coach is telling you, again, rather than just directly state a feeling, how can you turn that into an interesting story and a poem? So a lot of your early poetry was self-reflection then, and introspection, like we talked about.
It was introspection. All the emotions, the drama, the small victories, and being a single child to my parents. You mentioned. Yes, they wanted the best for me, and they wanted that I'm going to be the first in anything I was doing. So it was also that kind of pressure. So a lot of emotions. And I think what happened, the switch, which happened having a bit of coaching in writing, I moved from just outlining the emotions, articulating what exactly that means for me and what I take out of that. And that was where I think that was the most important shift happening, because later on, when I entered the other life experiences, I think this practice of this mindset of just pausing and thinking what it means for you, a certain experience, what is your take on that, how that influences the way how you become, that become a sort of reflex in my mindset, and I carried on with me my whole life.
Interesting. So now you started to discover that, you started to implement it, you're using that in your writing, and it's becoming really a skill, something you're become highly skilled in. So now walk us to corporate Laura, right? What were some of the positions you were doing? You talked about 7 countries, 5 continents. Give us a couple examples of what your career looked like at that point, and when you started to implement storytelling.
Well, when I started my corporate career, I started from the bottom, from the very low level.
Yeah.
I had this kind of gift in sales, so I embraced a sales career. And in sales, everything is storytelling. When you meet a prospect, when you are interacting with an existing client, the way how you connect with them, you connect through stories. It doesn't need to be like personal stories, but I was coming up with examples of people doing a certain thing which proved successful, and bridging the conversation into what if that example could be incorporated. Because storytelling can be connecting people, but can also bring opportunities up through comparison, through imagine if you are going to do that. So practicing storytelling in sales, it led to successful negotiations. Also, to build a good story, you really need to be a very curious person and a good listener. Because a story is based on the questions you asked, the curiosities you have, what are you learning, and how you take it into your life. Yeah. So if you follow this way of it's a behavior already, or it's a behavior in asking and listening, but it's also a mindset. And automatically you go through the steps in your mind. Actually, the stories which are coming up and the connections which are being built, they can last almost forever. Of course, if the people they want to, right? Because we know how the relationships last, right? So, so sales was the first way, the first place. After that, I switched. Working in operations, and that was a very different animal altogether.
Whole different animal. Before we get to operations, so I want to stop and pause and remind our listeners right there what you just said, because that was profound about storytelling and connecting with people. That's connecting with other coworkers. It's connecting in a sales role. It doesn't have to even be a sales job. It could be doing deliverables or operations. There's storytelling happening. But what I just thought about when you said the most important thing is the active listening, and making sure you're available to listen to somebody's story. And then it might not be telling you an exact story, but they're giving you some of their background and some of their discovery processes in sales. They're telling you why they're looking at this product, a little backstory. Have they interacted with it before? Have they looked at a competitor before? All this stuff is part of the story of the sale, right? And I think about, like, in movies, if we, and I can totally, this is true experience. Like, when you have a movie, you really want to show a family member. For me, it was my dad. My brother and myself were very close growing up, and we'd always, like, if there's a good movie we wanted to show our dad, we'd put it on. We're all excited, and in 10 minutes he'd be like asleep,
Yeah.
Or he'd just be distracted, and we'd be like, oh man, And I don't think he did it on purpose, but he wasn't into it. He wasn't listening to the story. He was whatever, right? So, like, it's that same example, and not always, but that's just kind of a funny story. I remember, like, my brother and I joking about, like, it's a really good movie if we can get dad through half of it,
It's a very good story behind the movie, right?
It's a great story if he's still listening, if he's still awake. Yeah. But that whole idea, or you show something to your friend and they're just distracted. Maybe nowadays they're on their phone or they're scrolling social media while, like, the movie's on in the background. You're like, I really wanted you to, like, watch this. This is my favorite movie or whatever. But that they're not making themselves available to the story. That doesn't mean it's not a good story. It means the intended audience member isn't giving it a chance.
Exactly.
And that's the same thing when you connect with somebody. If your prospect is in front of you and you're not really being a good listener, you're not even giving them yourself a chance or them a chance to tell their story. How the heck are you going to serve them?
Exactly.
So I just want to make sure we didn't just steamroll past that whole point of this is why storytelling is important. Because imagine that your prospect is trying to tell you their story and you're, like, passing out on the couch sleeping, or the buddy on the phone. You don't want to be that person. You got to make sure you're attentive so that story can be delivered.
Yeah, you are totally right. And I'll give you another example, talking about active listening and being a very good observer, and the ability to take in a different perspective. Diversity, we see diversity everywhere nowadays. And especially for me, living in so many cultures and meeting people from so many backgrounds and different upbringing, I think what helped me connecting with my teams and with making friendships all over the world, I think is the ability to really listen to people's stories. So imagine that tomorrow you move, let's say, to Europe. So first thing when you move into a new country is you listen and you observe, because you really need to find your way to integrate yourself into that culture, into the local way of living, to understand the food, to understand how people behave, what kind of, like, habits they have in that culture, right? So
yeah, you got to be a sponge to your environment, the way people talk and act, and so you don't want to be this stick out, like, hey, I don't belong here. You still want to stay true to yourself, but your antenna's up for what the cultural norms are, right?
Yeah, and asking questions. It's one of the ways where in my experience, I was like asking 100 questions. Why you guys you are doing this? What this celebration means? What are the best things to bring up in a certain conversation? When I was first time to Japan, I'll tell you that I had an entire day dedicated on Googling and understanding what are the best behaviors, then how I should behave, and what is like proper or improper in that particular culture. Because I think curiosity, active listening, and being a very good observer, these are mandatory skills for someone who wants to integrate and wants to evolve through doing changes, frequent changes during their lifetime. And that brings to stories and to storytelling.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, look, active listening is something I struggled with very early on, especially in sales, because when I first got into sales, I was in my early 20s. I was so excited about the products. I worked at a music store. So being a drummer, I loved it. And then I learned a lot about guitars, and it was more of a guitar store. So 95% of the people I'm talking to are about guitars and amps. So I was learning it all and I was excited. I wanted to tell everybody everything I knew about every product on the wall and in the demo room. And it's like, no. I got to figure out what this person standing in front of me cares about. What the heck is their story? What kind of band are they in? Are they in a band? Are they even interested in, what I know about? Or maybe they are interested in a new product that I don't know that much about. I need to get someone. Like, you have to figure it out. And also, being an active listener is great in relationships. It's essential and a necessary thing in relationships, and just being an overall great friend and person and human and employee. So it's something that I definitely had to learn over the years. I think I'm getting better at it. As a podcast host in the beginning of doing the show, I know I used to overtalk, and now I make sure I'm really intentional about fully listening to an answer and only interjecting when I feel we can tell a better story, right? So here's something that is a little different for our show. Our audience, I really am fueling all of these episodes I've been putting out. The people I've had, over 250 episodes, are typically entrepreneurial, but anyone who's leveled up in life. I've had athletes on, I've had just different people from all walks of life. I've had musicians on. I've had a magician on once or twice doing
amazing.
magic tricks. Just people that have a high, like, they're going after their passion. They love what they do and they're excelling in it and they're leveling up. And a lot of times it's a crash and burn story first, and then they finally get to where they're going. So we have this entrepreneurial spirit. That's the backbone of Mic'd Up. But I don't want it to also be like, oh, we're kicking corporate, or corporate's a dead dog and we shouldn't. Like, there's certain corporate jobs that, it makes sense. We need those people are in those roles, and that might be the right role for them. And there's a lot of W-2 jobs that are super important and, should be looked at in a positive light. What I want you to talk about, something I don't think we've ever talked about, is what are some things in those corporate jobs that you felt like was a must to carry over into the entrepreneurial journey? Because some of the things we learn in corporate are not all bad. Some of them is good practices. Hey, now I start my business and I should go back and do those things that made me successful over there. What comes to mind when I just said that?
Well, top of mind, it comes focus and drive. Because the type of roles I was in, they were like, one of the skills was, which I started to really nurture, was getting to the priorities and focus on getting things done. So this and that came up from operations, because the operations role comes with a lot of trying the logic, trying to understand structure, becoming creative, creating those processes that which they don't break, end-to-end processes. And I think from my operations role, I got the focus, the end-to-end concept, think end-to-end, or start with the end in mind and do the backwards planning.
Reverse engineer.
Reverse engineer. And after that, I think from from the product role, which I totally love, because I think whomever works in product or product organizations, they are really bringing value, creating products for customer needs. So that's value for me. So from the product and working in corporations, I sharpen up the way how a product gets built, the marketability, and that in entrepreneurship is gold.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So what were some of those when you became an entrepreneur? Let me get to that part of your story. So you started to really roll this stuff out. What were some of the things you're doing? I know we'll get to your company now, and I want to promote that towards the end of our conversation. But what were some of the early entrepreneurial things you were doing? Was it more coaching and teaching people how to implement these different strategies into their business?
Yeah, well, the story of my entrepreneurship, it started from, I know that I wanted to do it, but I really didn't know how to start with, because the leap from corporate to entrepreneurship, it's very different. When you are in corporation, you have teams around you. You have a lot of people helping you. You always have a shoulder to cry on and a mind to tap in order to get an answer. The entrepreneur journey, at the beginning, it's a very lonely one. You are a lot in your head, and you start to brainstorm and to build and to understand what is the customer niche you're gonna address. So I had a lot of introspection, a lot of flip chart pages torn apart to really get to my customer niche and the solution statement, what I'm gonna bring into the world as value. And it just happened that I was thinking to write a book. I would say 5 years ago. I was starting meddling with the idea, and in 2023. I was still with a leg in the corporate world. I started to really think seriously about pulling up a book, and that becomes Stories with Purpose. And
very cool.
From when I
How long did it take you to finally, once you started jotting down ideas and things like that, to once you really got serious and put that full effort in, how long did it take you to release the book?
Like a year time.
Yeah. So you put a real strong year behind it, and it's a great book. I mean, I know it's a bestseller and it's doing really well.
And that helped also my, so the idea of the book, the foundation, because all my business is built around this book. I'll be very transparent here.
Yeah.
So when I realized that the book is going to be the foundation for my business, I started to build up the value ladder on it. And I did a bit of the research. I went into the market and I said, okay, so in working professionals, what exactly are their pain points nowadays? And I realized through the research that 3 pain points, they were coming strong one. One was insecurity of job, the stress, the people being overworked. And also the diversity came in. Because nowadays, wherever you look, you're in a working place, unless it's a very small company, but in the large corporations, there is a lot of diversity and a lot of collaboration cross continents, cross geographies. So to me, when I was looking to the pain points, to what I can do, the leadership lessons I learned, the fact that I have stories which can help people not only learn, but to help people to write their own story, which is the foundation for everything, understanding who you are and who you become. I had this kind of realization, that big aha moment when I said, you know what? My entrepreneurship is going to be about people who are willing to discover their own story and to write their own story. And through that, they will be able to elevate themselves with emotional intelligence development, but to elevate themselves to the next best version of them. And that was the
Yeah.
very simple way how I started to build this business.
I'm smiling here, Laura, because it reminds me of, it goes back to you penning in your journal at 16 years old again. You got
Exactly.
that energy out. You got that feeling out, and you're helping entrepreneurs like, hey, you got to get your story out. People need to hear it. They want to learn from you. Like, you don't have it all figured out. You don't need to have it all figured out. You'll never have everything figured out. Put that down on paper. And that's something that I'm really reflecting on as well, because I do have an idea for a book, and some of the listeners who've been listening to the show for now a few years probably are sick of me saying, I'm going to eventually turn this into a book. It's something that I have this great idea behind. And so you're just reminding me right now, tell your story. Don't be afraid. And that's actually part of the reason I did the podcast, was to not only tell my story, get out of the way and allow all these great stories to be told on the show. So yeah, now you're helping entrepreneurs tell their story.
And writing the book, and I did also some research, and I was very excited and surprised, understanding that the first story known by humankind, in fact, was a poem. And it was the poem of Gilgamesh. It was a superhero story.
That's cool.
Encrypted on 12 plates, written in cuneiform. And when I realized that actually the first story known by humankind is a poem, and I said, oh my God, I have like over 70 poems. What if I put behind them the story what inspired those poems? Because giving the key to the metaphorical encryption, people will understand not only the lessons, but also the struggles, the way how you are sometimes at the crossroads in life, and you need to make decisions. And through out of that evolution from the simple poem to the story behind, it came up the idea, but what if I'm just gonna create this space for the readers to answer two mind-bending questions, which will help them ultimately to write their own story. And those reflections, they are also prompted to help the reader to write a verse if they want to. But just reflecting on creating that space, actually people will come up with amazing aha moments from their own life, things about they never thought about. And therefore, it's my way of helping them to be authentic, vulnerable in writing what they lived and what those experiences meant for them.
Can you share what those two thought-provoking questions are in the book?
Yes, I have the book here. Oh, so I just opened page 45.
Boom, you nailed it.
page 45. How does receiving a random act of kindness impact your perception of your own capabilities? That's one. And it's related to the poem, Let It Be Light. I'm gonna go to my favorite one. Will you allow me to go to my favorite one?
Oh,
so my favorite one.
The floor is yours.
Yes. My favorite one, it's named The Prince in My Living Room. And the story behind is that if someone is thinking of waiting for someone to save you in some situations, you are just wasting your time, because actually you have to help yourself. So you are the prince in the living room. So one of the
it's that theory. I'm not sure if you've heard this, but it's, when you're in an airplane, they always tell you to put your oxygen mask on first, right?
Yes,
because
exactly.
if you're not okay, how are you going to help anybody? You got to help. If you want to help people, you got to help yourself first in that situation. That's a great analogy for life, and like you're talking about.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one of the questions is like, can you identify a recent situation when you waited for someone else to resolve a problem for you? How could you have been taken control? Or think about a decision you've been avoiding. What steps can you take today to start making that decision for yourself?
Yeah, that's great.
So each there are 28 poems with their unique 28 stories and 2 mind-bending
So your
questions.
book has 28 of your poems. 28 of your poems are in there. 2 mind-bending questions. You mentioned 70 poems total that you have published. Where can those be found? Are those on your website?
Well, the 70 poems, I didn't say that they are published, they are written, but the 70
Written, sorry.
poems, they are coming with the second book, which is going to be up in October this year. The book name is Love Is, and my own definition of love is learning, open mind, versatility, and empowerment. And the behaviors behind my definition of love are curiosity, creativity, courage for versatility, and confidence for empowerment. So these 4 C's, and actually the book is helping the reader to understand, to reflect on what love is for them, what it meant for them. So,
that's so good. What were the 4 C's one more time? Say them again. I want to make sure we highlight them.
So learning is curiosity. Open mind is creativity. Versatility is courage. And empowerment is confidence.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, that ties it all together really nicely. I'm excited for that book to come out. When do you anticipate? I'd love to have you back on the show to talk about that.
So I anticipate it to be out on October. I have if you don't have a deadline, you don't get things done. So I always have a deadline to my stuff. So the book is scheduled for October 6th. It just happened that October 6th, it's also the International Poetry Day. So it ties.
That's just a coincidence. Come on.
Yeah, it's just a coincidence. What can I say?
That's incredible. I believe in fate. I believe in the universe. Yes. I do believe in God, and I think it all connects together. And when there's a magical moment like that, and it's a God wink. It's a because this is supposed to happen this way.
When I said October 6th, my publisher went immediately on Google. What's happening on October 6th? He said, "Oh my God!" But it's International Poetry Day. I said, "I knew it."
That's incredible. That's awesome.
Yes.
Hey, I want to give some love to our sponsor real quick. Social Chameleon is our sponsor. That's my podcast agency. And you can catch us at socialchameleon.us. We will help you transform your podcast. If you're an entrepreneur, a B2B, and you're looking to have a podcast that's part of your brand, part of your storytelling, like Laura's talking about today, we will do it all for you. You press record and we handle the rest. It's podcasting done for you. Go to socialchameleon.us. And a couple shout outs here to our affiliates, Riverside.fm. We're actually recording this on Riverside right now for great high quality audio and video. And Libsyn.com is how I do all the distribution for the audio, Libsyn.com. And you guys can get a free month if you're starting a podcast, launching a podcast. First of all, reach out to me. I'd love to help you with that or point you in the right direction. But if you want a free month of Libsyn, use promo code BEGREAT. And I believe it's all caps, BEGREAT. Be great. And I always love to end every episode with be great and be grateful. And before we get to the end here, I got you for a couple more minutes. I know you encourage your readers to confront their fears, right? And there's different ways to do that. Can you share a moment when you personally faced a significant fear and like how you eventually overcame that, and kind of walk us through the process? So if we have a fear, and entrepreneurs, we may not always admit it, but there's things that are keeping us up at night. How did you navigate through that?
So the recent fear which I overcome, and you'll be surprised, is the fear of exposure. In corporate life, I was not very much on social media, and even now, if you are looking to LinkedIn, to people who are still in corporate, some of them, and I think that most of them, they still have very little presence on social media. They are more consuming than contributing on social media. And that was me until May last year. I was even afraid to record the video, to be on camera. And the way how I succeeded to overcome this fear, actually, I joined forces with someone. I realized that I cannot do it by myself. It felt so weird to be in front of my phone and record myself. So therefore, I joined forces with Victoria, a friend of mine from Spain. And we had a little podcast together. The first episodes, they were an absolute disaster. When I'm looking back right now, and I want them to be out there because that is...
It's like when a baby takes its first steps.
Exactly.
It's a stumble. It's a fall. It's a, hey, you don't really know what you're doing. You do it anyways. You fall down. And that's what my first episode was the same thing. It was I don't want to say horrible from a content standpoint because I thought the conversation was incredible, but yeah, it wasn't produced right from day one. And so yeah, keep going with the story. So you guys kind of helped each other peel that Band-Aid off, right? And say, I got to get out there and do this.
And one of the first episodes, I remember, it was Courage versus Fear. And we were just talking about how together we become stronger, and the courage to act in spite of the fear of exposure. And even though neither of us were like native English speakers, actually we did very well. And right now when I'm looking to the YouTube channel, that is one of the most viewed episodes because we were talking about something which not only us, but there are so many other people feeling the same. So to me, that was a very eye-opening. And even in my business, I realized that I become much stronger when I do partnerships or collaborations with people mindset alike. Because together we become a much stronger voice, and we also complement each other in a way that the value multiplies when it goes out to our customers or to our listeners or to my social media followers. So I learned the lesson of collaboration and experiencing and joining forces. And I'm doing this like every other day. I'm looking for partnerships. I'm looking for people with whom I can collaborate. And so that was my way of getting out of the fear of exposure.
What an incredible way. I wish we didn't have to end this episode because there's so much more I want to ask you about in the book. But I think a great way to put a bow on this, we talked about that first moment where you started journaling, and that was you getting uncomfortable enough to put your thoughts, your feelings into words, and eventually it was just words on a page that you then went back creatively through. You didn't do it by yourself. You had a coach who helped turn you more into the poet that you are today, that creative writer that you are today. Then you realized the art of storytelling. Then as you went, you did that. You did corporates. You bounced around in 5 continents, 7 countries. You became a business leader, an entrepreneur. And then you realized, oh my gosh, there's this social media thing. I got to get out there. I'm comfortable in front of people in real life, but now I got to talk to people I don't even know who's watching this thing, and you feel uncomfortable. And we've talked about it a number of times on the show. Imposter syndrome is a real thing. I struggle with it. Where we're totally capable of doing a great job, but for some reason, something in our past, whether it's parents or society or culture or a situation in school,
our own
nature, whatever it could be, one person that didn't believe in us, and a million people do, and for some reason, we always focus on the one. So what you just said there is profound. Get to the root of it, and what you said secondly was amazing insight and advice. You don't have to go at it alone. Find someone who vibes with you, who can bring you up. And you know what? That person, you're going to bring them up. There's going to be a day when they don't feel comfortable or confident getting on the microphone. Give and receive. You're stronger together. It's just like any relationship. It's like marriage. You're stronger together, right? Relationship with your kids. You're stronger together. So yeah, if you're looking to start a podcast right now, I'm not trying to use this as a promotional moment, but like if someone is trying to start a website, a business, a podcast, consider going along with someone who you can really bounce ideas off. Like Steve Jobs started Apple, but if it wasn't the other Steve, is it Wozniak?
Yes,
I'm going from memory here, which is dangerous. But like the two Steves really were a big part of it. I don't know if it becomes what it does with only one of them, right? You think about any great filmmaker. All right, well, if they don't have a good director of photography, they don't have great actors, and their lighting stinks and their wardrobe looks ridiculous, their great story isn't told, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have a great way to get it out and market it and brand it, no one shows up to the theaters, it's a flop. It could be a beautiful film, but it's going to end up being stuck in indie mode opposed to getting out to the masses because you tried to do everything alone. So definitely a great reminder. And that was something I learned very early on with Social Chameleon. I was doing me, myself, and I mode for the first couple of years, very lean. And now I wouldn't be able to do all the shows we produce right now. It would be 100% impossible for me to do the amount of content that we now produce. I wouldn't be able to do it myself. So it's impossible for me to run the business alone right now, which is exciting. And this is such a great conversation. Before we run, I know unfortunately we do have to go. Any last words you'd like to say to the audience before we jet?
I would say like this, and I'm gonna be using a quote from my book, and what I would like to encourage everyone is to think about their own story, because their own story is holding an unparalleled power and purpose. And their own story is the gateway that unlocks individual potential in profound ways, which they are about to discover just writing their own story. So I'm going to let your listeners and the viewers reflecting and asking themselves about their own story and the value it brings to their life, and have the courage to start writing it.
Yeah. And even if they're not going to write it down, look in the mirror first and say, what's the story that I want to write?
Yes.
That's what's exciting to me every day. Good, bad. If the day previous was bad, if the day previous was good, the next day we wake up, we look in the mirror and we can say, what's the story I want to write about today? And I forget that. And the fact that you just said that is something. And I actually I'm going to put a sticky note, I'm going to put a sticky note on my mirror that's going to say, what is the story you want to write today? Oh, that's so good. Wow. Mic drop moment right there with Laura. And I want to make sure I'm saying it correctly. Laura Patac, right?
Laura Patac. And together we are doing a very good team, my friend Mike.
That's right. When you were talking about partnership and collaboration, I'm thinking this conversation's a partnership and collaboration.
Exactly.
So thank you so much. Again, everyone who's interested in Laura's information, guys, thank you for being with us. Like, subscribe to the channel, share it with your friends, share it with your coworkers, share it with anybody who you think needs to hear the fact that, hey, tell your story. What is the story that you're going to tell today? Laura, thank you so much for being on the show. Cheers. Be great and be grateful, and I'm grateful for you.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike. Thank you.